Tonight, 4 days into the top job, New South Wales Premier heads to Menindee to see the fish kill aftermath for himself. And unable to keep up with the unsustainable cost of living, the Port Augusta pet store to shut up shop in the coming weeks.
From our 7 Spencer Golf Studios, your nightly news with Madeline Kerr begins now.
Good evening, thanks for joining us. The ink has barely had a chance to dry on his commission papers, but that didn't stop the newly elected New South Wales Premier heading over to Menindee today. Chris Minns experiencing firsthand the aftermath of one of the worst fish kills the Far West has ever seen.
The new Premier getting a briefing from the local authorities.
I just wanted I guess everybody involved with the fisheries.
With Penny Sharp and the recently re-elected member for Barwon, Roy Butler, also in town to witness the devastation for themselves.
We know events like this can be devastating for communities, particularly in the state's central west, particularly when you consider the roller coaster over the last 4 years going from extreme drought to an abundance of water. The effects on the local ecology have been huge.
Mr Minns ready to protect the waterways in the Far West.
This is a town that we want to see growing and thriving both with tourism and agriculture. We know that in many ways it's a marvel of the world, but we need to make sure that we protect its waterways, particularly when there's an abundance of water.
The Premier, no stranger to Menindee, travelling here when he was the Shadow Water Minister.
I remember being on the banks of this waterway around 4 years ago and seeing the effects of the opposite of these environmental conditions, what the effect of the drought was on this community. So our job today is to listen and learn.
The member for Barwon recognising how fast Mr Minns made his way to Menindee after the election.
I think I need to acknowledge that the Premier, the election was only on Saturday, the Premier was only sworn in yesterday, is that correct?
That's right.
So I think it's worthy of note that he's actually made the effort, and 2 of his senior MLCs have also made the effort to get out here this quickly.
Unable to get here during the campaign, Mr Minns wanted to let the people of regional New South Wales know that they are a priority for the new government.
I think that the images of fish piling up on the side of the banks of this beautiful river was a concern for us, and we wanted to make sure that we saw it with our own eyes, listen to the community and get an understanding of how the emergency response is taking place.
Joshua Mercer, 7 Spencer Golf News.
Orana is continuing to downsize in Port Augusta, with its last remaining enterprise to close its doors next month. The organisation's support services will remain, but locals are sad and angry.
A blow to the Port Augusta community, especially those employed or volunteering with a disability. Orana announcing its pet store on Commercial Road will be shutting down next month.
It is not good news. I'll be getting in touch with Orana tomorrow to see what the full circumstances are.
The move has shocked the community, given its employment and training opportunities for people with disabilities.
The last thing we want to see is them have no employment outlet. So it's an incredibly important service.
Orana had already shut down its news agency at Wharflands Plaza at the beginning of this month, which sparked concerns about the pet store. Now those fears have been realised. In a statement to 7 Spencer Golf News, Orana blamed economic factors and rising costs for the closure, saying the pet store was no longer viable to remain open despite the best efforts of staff. The company further added it aims to relocate personnel and business services to its operations building on Marriott Street, but didn't reference if there would be any redundancies handed out. The pet store will officially close its doors on Friday, April 14th, cutting off another vital support service for people living with disability who are aiming for an independent life. Daniel Pizarro, 7 Spencer Golf News.
The Australian Men's Shed Association is the national service provider for over 1,200 people across the country. And the one in Crystal Brook just received a financial boost from the state government to the tune of $10,000.
Men don't talk face to face, they talk shoulder to shoulder. Established in 2017, the Crystal Brook Men's Shed has been going strong ever since.
The guys just roll up here, chat, have a coffee, do some woodwork, do some metal work, but it's really supporting one another mentally and physically.
The shed recently receiving $10,000 in funding through the state government's three-phase power connection.
When the shed was originally built, we only got single phase, so that's all we could afford originally. But now we've got a lot more machinery and a lot more electrical requirements.
Taking a look inside the shed, they certainly need it, with multiple individual and group projects taking place at all times, using a lot of different machines. Members regularly meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but catch-ups aren't restricted.
While we were actually building the shed, when the shed was built, we were here, I think, 5 days a week. Yeah. You know, it just couldn't keep us away. It was got a bit silly, really, because...
If you've been wanting to join a shed, this is your push.
There's not the facilities like in the city where there are lots of support mechanisms. In the country they are here, but they're few and far between. And I think the men's shed serves as a good connection between some of those services.
Annabelle Francis, 7 Spencer Golf News.
Still to come tonight, questions raised of the possibility a tiny Spencer Golf town could be the place nuclear waste is stored. And delivery delays and custom designs behind the rescheduling of Port Lincoln's new play space. Welcome back. The legal action between the Bungala people and the federal government over the Kimba nuclear waste facility is continuing. It comes as questions surface about whether or not the facility will be impacted by the recently announced multi-billion-dollar submarine deal.
As the latest court action by the Bungala people shows no sign of stopping, activists are keen on reminding the people about their opposition to the Kimba proposal.
We don't need nuclear waste in our country. I'm sure you all agree with that.
The mentioning of the legal action at the opening ceremony of the Joy Bullich Bridge in Port Augusta drew mixed reaction from the crowd, and a fiery response from federal member for Grey Ron Ramsey after Uncle Harry Jonas said the federal government brought the case.
Harry chose to bring it up. I chose not to let it slip by. He complained the fact that federal government has spent $14 million in court costs versus the Bungala, and I just made the point that it wasn't the federal government that took the Bungala to court, it is the Bungala that has taken the federal government to court.
Mr Ramsey pointed out over 60% of Kimba locals voted in favour of the proposed waste facility.
The community wants it, but they are tired of having to justify themselves to the rest of Australia, to people who don't live there, who know only snippets of the information.
State member for Giles, Eddie Hughes, has highlighted the situation for Kimba could be altered due to the nuclear-powered submarines being built in Australia under the recently announced AUKUS deal.
A long-term geological disposal is needed, and it would make far more sense to leave the long-lived intermediate waste where it is and where it's licensed to be held until such time as we've nationally looked at how best to take care of the long-lived waste that we are generating.
That location is Lucas Heights in Sydney, but will reach full capacity by 2028.
It needs to go somewhere. So we not only need a solution, we need a solution reasonably quickly now. Given that any facility anywhere will take years to build, this needs to start happening.
Daniel Pizarro, 7 Spencer Golf News.
After multiple delays and postponing last week's opening, works on Port Lincoln Foreshore's play space are continuing. Council says getting some of its custom-built items are taking longer than expected.
Everyone is hard at work preparing the space for children and families to enjoy.
Well, as you can see, it's a hive of activity here behind us. So we have had some delays on the project, but we're very pleased to see this activity happening now.
The main delay being the custom-made elevated platforms.
Behind me is the elevated platforms, and we were really waiting for that piece of the puzzle to come in on site, and then you can see the amount of work that's happening around it.
And that's not the only variable to set workers back.
With any project at the moment, we're experiencing delays in materials, ordering, manufacture. This project, we had some early latent conditions and weather early on, which impacted on site compaction and technical design.
Workers have also been taking the time and care to ensure things are done right.
we're really looking forward to bringing this project to a conclusion and opening up this wonderland for families to enjoy in the coming weeks.
Council is especially looking forward to unveiling how Bungala and First Nations storytelling has been embedded in the play space design.
Bungala storytelling is key. Throughout this play space, we've got elements that have been designed around the fish traps, which is the traditional fish traps of the First Nations peoples, and we've also got storytelling represented in the artworks.
Council isn't committing to an opening date yet, waiting to see how things track over the next 2 weeks. Alison Hall, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Stay with us. After the break, another economic forum discussing the future of the Upper Spencer Gulf, including the multi-million-dollar Fisherman Bay project. And behind the scenes of the biggest desalination plant in South Australia. Welcome back. For the first time ever, all elected members from the 69 councils across South Australia have been invited to participate at a high-profile economic forum in the capital. The Malinowskis Labor government saying collaboration between all governments is essential in order for places like the Spencer Gulf to continue growing.
Keeping the discussions going after Country Cabinet. South Australia's economic future and growth is looking promising, with the development of a state and local government economic partnership accord.
The state government has to acknowledge, and vice versa, that the local government association, councils in particular, play a very, very important pivotal area in their communities. They know what's going on. They are the ones that be able to know the opportunities, things like that.
As Minister for Local Government, Jeff Brook had been looking to host an event like this for quite some time. The member for Stewart saying he hasn't seen this level of partnership before.
To have the Premier there and the Deputy Premier, Nikki Govan, she was the ex-chair of Business SA, and we also had the CEO of the Barunga West Council who have done an extremely good job with what they're doing over there.
The multi-million-dollar Fisherman Bay project is one of many large-scale projects taking place in the Upper Spencer Gulf. And Minister Brock hopes this forum sheds light on South Australia's potential.
Our destiny is in front of us at the moment with all the stuff that's happening with the hydrogen, the AUKUS, the submarines, and also renewable energy projects and across all of South Australia. And we've got great opportunities. We have to work together and achieve that.
With a similar forum held in Port Augusta last week, it's hoped the continuation of these economic think tanks will benefit the community in both the short and long term by keeping locals up to date with the happenings in their backyards. Annabelle Francis, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Following the recent announcement of Billy Lights Points as the preferred site for a desalination plant on the Eyre Peninsula, media, including our own Alison Hall, have been invited to tour the desal plant over in Adelaide. The aim of the tour is for us to show you a behind-the-scenes experience of a desalination plant, how it works, and to see it in action. The Lonsdale facility is the biggest of its kind in the whole of the state and has been producing safe, clean drinking water since 2011. We'll bring you the full report of the tour tomorrow night, right here on 7 Spencer Gulf Nightly News. But stay with us after the break. Big jumps and plateauing prices. The Spencer Gulf Fuel Watch is up next. And there was a spattering of rain in Port Lincoln this morning. We'll have the weather details with Alex Sykes. Welcome back. Not as many green arrows as we'd like to see in this week's Fuel Watch, with a few Spencer Gulf petrol stations seeing little difference when it comes to the average price of fuel. But with that said, we have seen a huge decrease in the price of LPG in Port Pirie and Adelaide, while the other centres remain stagnant. Starting with unleaded petrol, $1.78 can get you a litre of petrol in Port Lincoln this week, down from the $1.80s this time 7 days ago. It's also the cheapest in the region, even when we include Adelaide. Slightly lower in Whyalla, the average cost is sitting at around $1.83.9. There's a red arrow in Port Augusta. Unleaded drivers there can expect to pay an average of 5 cents more this week, which is more expensive than what you'd pay in Broken Hill at the moment. In Port Pirie, the average price is a smidgen of a fraction lower, down to $1.84.8. And taking a look at the diesel prices now, and there's more green than red. We still don't want to see those downward arrows though. Barely a difference in Port Lincoln this week, down an average of 1 cent per litre to $1.96. Slight drop in Whyalla as well. The average cost of diesel is sitting at around the $1.95 mark. Shopping around will pay off in Port Augusta. The average price is quite high at the moment at $1.98.9. But you can get it for 14 cents less at some other places. Port Pirie diesel drivers can expect to pay around $1.94 per litre, 1 cent more than last week. And over the border in Broken Hill, the average price is sitting at around $1.96, 3 cents cheaper than last week. We do love to see it under $2. Finally, taking a quick look at how LPG is faring at the moment. Prices remain stagnant in Port Lincoln at $1.26 per litre. No change in Whyalla, Kadina or Broken Hill either. But the big jump in our region can be felt in Port Pirie. This time last week, the average price was almost $1.88 per litre. But this week, the average is just shy of $1.20. What a difference a week can make. And just a reminder, these prices are just the averages and do not reflect any one particular outlet. If you do find fuel for cheaper, feel free to let us know via our Facebook page. But it's time now to take a look at what's happening in the weather with Alex Sykes. Alex, good evening to you. Run us through some of these overnight lows.
They're in the teens, Maddie. Though not unusual for this time of year, really does sneak up on us after such a long time with really warm overnight lows. Down to 15 in Port Augusta last night, the coolest it's been in a few weeks. It was just a month ago when the overnight low peaked at 27.5 degrees, so we're definitely feeling a difference. Looking at some of today's temperatures now, can you see a pattern? 25 degrees in Port Augusta today, 25 in Broken Hill, and you guessed it, 25 degrees in Woodna. Looking more broadly at today's weather map now, and yes, there was more variety. 26 degrees was the warmest it got today up in Cooper Pedy. 23 the top in Whyalla, Port Pirie and Kadina. Port Lincoln topped 22. Taking a look at the satellite image now, a ridge of high pressure is extending over western waters and will move to be over remaining waters over the weekend. A weakening cold front will pass over the southeast of the state on Friday. Moving on to tomorrow's weather outlook now, and we'll start with the Gulf waters. Southerly winds 10 to 15 knots, becoming variable about 10 knots before dawn. Seas below 1 metre and south to southwesterly swell around 1 metre. Turning to tomorrow's temperatures now, partly cloudy and 22 degrees in Port Lincoln tomorrow, between 11 and 21 in Cleve. Cloudy and a top of 22 in Woodna on Thursday, down to single digits overnight. Partly cloudy conditions around Whyalla tomorrow, getting to around 21 degrees. Just 23 on the way for Port Augusta, becoming cloudy around Kadina, set to reach a high of 22, down to 7 overnight. Port Pirie partly cloudy and set to reach a high of 23 degrees. Partly cloudy in Clare as well, just 19 there. Sunny in Broken Hill, 22 degrees with some southerly winds up to 20 kilometres an hour. Taking a look further through the week now, starting with Friday's forecast. Possible showers in the lower half of our map from Whyalla downwards. Temperatures between 21 and 24 degrees across the board, with partly cloudy conditions in Woodna and Port Pirie. Moving on to Saturday's outlook now. No rain at this stage, just some clouds. Just 20 degrees in Port Lincoln and Adelaide, 22 in Kadina and Broken Hill, 23 in Woodna and Port Augusta. And finally, taking a quick look at Sunday's weather map. And we've got some sun, blue skies in Whyalla, Kadina, Port Pirie and Broken Hill. Temperatures between 21 and 24 degrees in those centres. Elsewhere, partly cloudy conditions, 21 set to be the top in Port Lincoln, 25 will be the high in Port Augusta and Cooper Pedy as well. And that's all the weather from me for tonight. I'll see you a little later with an update. It's back to you, Maddie.
Thanks for that, Alex. And that's the local news this Wednesday. I'm Madeline Kerr. From all of us here, thanks for joining us. I'll have updates a little later. But until then, enjoy your evening. Good night.